Horror books just don't work for me like they used to, and I want to talk about it. For probably about the past year now, maybe even year and a half, I've really gone off of horror. And there are certain things I can probably pinpoint and say this is partly why, but I also don't fully know what the reason is. But I know that horror just doesn't seem to do it for me so much anymore. And I want to have a little talk about it, both because I might find kindred spirits who too are struggling with horror, who desperately want to read it but just don't really enjoy it that much anymore at the minute. And or I might get tips from you guys for anyone who's like beat this and has come through the other side and can help me get into horror again. Now, for those of you that don't know, I've had a rough couple of years. It started in like May 2024 when my granny was taken into hospital and she had leukemia, and we didn't think it was like end of life stage, but it ended up being end of life stage, and 6 weeks later she passed away. And about 2-3 weeks before she passed away, my dad was very unexpectedly taken into hospital and he was diagnosed with mesothelioma. And on the day he was diagnosed with mesothelioma, our family dog died unexpectedly. And everything has just been shite. And then literally a year and like a week later, after my granny died, my dad died of mesothelioma, which is like asbestos cancer for anyone that doesn't know. So I had two family members who I'm very close to passing away of pretty much the same thing, and having to watch them go through that battle with cancer within basically like a year. And I definitely noticed, unsurprisingly, that like my love for horror has decreased since then. Now, interestingly, when my granny first died, it actually was the opposite. All I wanted to read was horror. I was like, I really can't get invested in two people falling in love and being happy because I'm not happy. And I read, honestly, like kind of like latter half of 2024, I read a lot of banger horror books. But then something started happening, and I don't exactly know what it was, but I started drifting away and away from horror. When I was reading it, it started feeling like a chore, not like something I actually wanted to read. I was noticing that extreme horror, which I previously enjoyed and thought was just really fun, really wasn't doing it for me, and that, you know, is kind of understandable. It is very dark indeed, but whereas before I could kind of look at it and like kind of get my little chaos gremlin fix from extreme horror to an extent, particularly with the books that I read, it just started being something that made me like sad and stressed. So I stopped reading extreme horror, and then slowly just horror itself just started to take a decline. I mean, I do get that. I have big sad boy feelings all the time for obvious reasons now. I guess my brain probably doesn't want to consume such sad, horror-y stuff. I did try and read a horror book about maybe like 3 weeks ago now, and I got to the intro, finished the intro, and I was just, the entire time I was like, I'm so stressed. I feel so stressed reading this. I'm sad. I don't want to read it. I also think the increase in my reading of romance, and particularly like paranormal romances that deal with darker themes, has also coloured this enjoyment a little bit. Horror, as with pretty much every genre except romance, is mainly dominated by men, and it's often dominated by white men. That is not inherently bad, I would like to say, and probably the majority of horror books I've read, because that's what tends to be pushed, because that's the demographic that dominate horror, have been by white men, and I've enjoyed many. So I'm not saying that being a straight white guy is bad and means you can't write good horror. That being said, since I have increased my consumption exponentially of romance, paranormal romance that deals with like quite horrific, dark themes, I've been noticing that that's bled over to my enjoyment of horror. And I've just been noticing that some of these dark themes that can kind of overlap with horror books are being portrayed in paranormal romance, but done a lot more better, a lot more sensitively. So I think then when I'm going back to horror, written by generally like a straight white man, I'm finding that the dealing of these darker kind of themes can often be, not always, often, in my opinion, be a lot more shallow, not be done with the same kind of sensitivity. And I am noticing more, which I don't think I noticed, you know, even like a year ago. A lot of horrors written by men, again, not all, but a lot, tend to just throw essay or grape out there just to be like, this person's bad, he did a grape. And it's like, I don't need to read about a woman being essayed or grape for you to tell me a character's bad. I could have gleaned that. You could have told me in a different way. And sometimes it feels really superfluous and exploitative. And equally, you know, sometimes you read these books and the way female relationships, the way women are portrayed, it feels icky. And I've seen quite a lot, or I've read quite a few that portray lesbian relationships, but in a way that feels really fetishized. And you know, this isn't the case for all horror books, and I'm trying to be really careful with how I word things because I don't want this to come across as like a smear piece on straight white men writing horror. Again, I've read many horror books by straight white men and I've enjoyed many, many, many of them, and I will not stop reading books by men. But I do feel over the past year, out of all of the horror books that I've actually genuinely enjoyed and given like 4 stars and above, have all been written by women. And so I feel like there's a bit of a trend in my reading habits to read horror written by women because I do think it tends to be more sensitive and nuanced. And, you know, logic follows that as a woman, I would possibly feel a bit more drawn to horror written by women. Slight segue, but I bought this new light recently. Why did I buy the new light? Don't know. Do I have a stand for this light? I think so. I think it's a screw one. I think I have one, but who knows at this stage. But anyway, we're gonna put the light up because we're doing horror, guys. So we need to get some mood lighting in here. So yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's a combination of kind of like my personal growth as a reader, trends I'm finding within books that I don't like, and then also just personal circumstances. But I really miss horror, and because I am a genre reader in that I read romance, I read horror, and to take one half of what I read away has left me feeling sad and a bit bereft. So what I'm going to try and do to kind of get back into horror, I guess, if it's possible. Firstly, I'm going to give myself a lot of grace. I'm going to give myself the permission to pick up a book, start reading it, and then go, no, I don't want to, this isn't for me, and put it down. And I'm not going to take that as a failure, and I'm not going to take that as, well, I better DNF this book then. I'm going to take it as, you know what, I tried, and right now is not the time. I'm also, I think, going to prioritise reading horror written by women, because that seems to be what speaks to me the most at the minute. And then I probably will prioritise reading queer men, men of colour, disabled men, whatever the case is. I'm going to avoid like the plague litfic. God, if I accidentally pick up a litfic horror book, shoot me. I'm not a fan of litfic personally, so yeah, we're going to avoid litfic like the plague because that ain't going to do me no good. And I think I'm just going to take the pressure off of myself that I feel constantly to read horror and just be like, you know what, if you feel like it today, you pick up that book and you see. But I'm keen to hear if anyone else has had similar experience, either at this point in their life or at another point in their life. Does anyone have any advice for me? Any horror books they'd recommend? I'm all ears. But like this video, subscribe to me please if you'd like to. I'm trying to grow my channel. I would love to have you along. Comment down below your thoughts and yeah, I'll see you in my next video.